Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to my channel, I Hate Rock Music. And this video is about the band Camberwell Now. And any fans of This Heat will know full well about Camberwell Now. And Camberwell Now is around from 1982 to 1987, so a good 5-year stretch. And they released 2 EPs and 1 album. Meridian was released in 1982. The full album Ghost Trade was released in 1985, and the Green Fingers EP was released in 1986. And they're definitely a continuation of This Heat. And in fact, I would suggest they're basically This Heat with another name. Even though they have a completely different lineup, it's definitely the direction that This Heat was going into. So Camberwell Now, of course, was Charles Hayward on vocals and drums and all kinds of auto harp and melodica and all kinds of other instruments. And then Trevor Garraway on bass guitar, ukulele and vocals and other instruments. And then Stephen Rickard, studio and field recordings. And he was actually one of the road crew for This Heat, and was also working with This Heat on his field recordings and adding a lot of different sound effects. So it was natural for him to join the new lineup. And in fact, this lineup of Camberwell Now was actually the last incarnation of This Heat, because they still did some touring in the final days of This Heat with this new lineup. And so I stand by my claim that Camberwell Now is just an extension of This Heat. And another reason why I say that is because a lot of the material that shows up in Camberwell Now, like the Green Fingers EP and material on Meridian, were tunes that This Heat were doing in their final incarnation as well. And not only that, I have a collection of demos of what was going to be the third This Heat album. And This Heat was definitely moving in the direction that Camberwell Now adopted. A lot less dark than This Heat was, a lot less jagged and confrontational and experimental. And so a lot of the improvisation, a lot of the noise elements, a lot of the samples that marked This Heat's work were going to be gone eventually anyway, going into the latter This Heat and also Camberwell Now, because the final demos of This Heat definitely were a lot more low-key, a lot more song-oriented. Almost all of them had vocals, and a lot of the material that was in This Heat demos eventually showed up in Camberwell Now. And Camberwell Now is great. If you're familiar with This Heat, I don't really need to explain too much, but the fact is that Camberwell Now features Charles Hayward's idiosyncratic drumming. Dominates Camberwell Now, whereas with This Heat, he was up front for a lot of their more rock elements, but a lot of the music that This Heat didn't even feature drums per se. But with Camberwell Now, we have a full rock band. Charles Hayward's drums are on all the tracks, and definite rhythms, definite song structures. And then a lot of vocals, including the awesome background vocals that were hinted at with This Heat, are in full appearance with Camberwell Now. And just like This Heat, I'd have a hard time explaining exactly what Camberwell Now sounds like. Just really evocative rhythms, really idiosyncratic singing. Definitely melodic, although there's some atonal moments. And then just a rich instrumental tapestry. Definitely not guitar dominated by any stretch. In fact, there's a lot of keyboards, but with all the different instruments that the 3 members of Camberwell Now play, they create an interesting tapestry that's definitely rock, but not guitar oriented, and certainly not as guitar oriented as the rock material on This Heat. But thankfully, there's a collection on CD now called All's Well That Ends Well, that has both EPs and the Ghost Trade album, and it's just a great piece of work. The Ghost Trade album I bought when it came out, of course, because it was a spin-off of This Heat, and I had to have it, and just a wonderful record. I've enjoyed it for for going on 40 years now. And just like you, this heat was a very unique band. Camberwell now is utterly unique, distinguished by Charles Hayward's really interesting and idiosyncratic vocals, and then the harmonies, the oblique harmonies that go along with it, and then just a rich tapestry of music behind this vocal work. So really interesting that Camberwell now, as I've mentioned a couple times, is really an extension of this heat. And in some respects, one could just call it the evolution of this heat. But I understand why they changed the name with a new lineup of musicians. But the continuation of this heat into Camberwell now is a pretty smooth transition. So I'll put what I can find on YouTube below to check out. But if you're not familiar with this heat, I did a separate video on them, and including many links and even some live material. And I'll put what I can down below about Camberwell now. But wonderful band. It's not necessarily for a lot of the classic rock crowd, but as far as post-punk, prog, Canterbury sound of the mid 80s, it's really as wonderful as it gets. And Charles Hayward's definitely a giant. So Camberwell now, check them out. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.